Today I was feeling like looking at some cruddy PC game from the 2000s, and I think I found the perfect one. Today, we're going to be looking at a game released 18 years ago called Dragonblade Cursed Lands Treasure. Yeah, sorry, I don't own this physically.
Dragonblade Cursed Lands Treasure was developed and released by Polish studio Openoko Entertainment in 2006 on CD-ROM for PC, seemingly only in Europe. The game has little to no online presence, with only a couple channels doing Let's Play videos of it on YouTube, which were all mostly abandoned.
That's a good sign. Not many reviews exist of this game either, at least not on the English side of the internet. There could very well be some in other languages, but I'm too lazy to investigate. So I'll make it my duty to introduce this game to the world. And so, without further ado, let's get started, shall we?
The game starts and you're introduced to...
Oh my god. Is that Sephiroth? With a hyper-realistic human face? Hyper-realistic. It is realistic, because it's just a picture of some guy! Oh, this is gonna be good.
You're introduced to Hero. As far as I can tell, according to the box and such, his only name is Hero. And right after this cutscene, you're thrown into the game and oh my god. Okay, first of all, everything is just so gray. The sand is gray, the plants are gray, the HUD is gray, you are gray, it's all gray.
Now, okay, casting our minds back to 2006 with the start of the HD era, and games like Gears of War, Twilight Princess, Oblivion, and later on games like GTA 4 and even Super Smash Bros. Brawl, a muddy color palette was sorta in at the time as a realistic color scheme, so you could argue it's not that out of place. But those games had at least good-looking models, and it sort of worked as a style. Here, it just looks like gravy. Emphasis on the gray.
The modeling in this game looks pretty bad, honestly. If this was 2001, maybe even 2003, then I'd say it's acceptable. Hell, it's not much better from something like Trespasser from 1998, just with bloom and sledge caked all over it.
God, brought up Trespasser. Now I gotta talk about that one day. But not today.
Back to the graphics. You can turn off the post-processing in the menu, and honestly the game looks a lot better with it off. Most of my playthrough I kept turning it off, only turning it on once in a while to see if it was as bad as I remembered. Turning it off isn't just for aesthetical or performance reasons either, it seriously gets in the way, such as when you're shooting in close combat. The smoke is so opaque, it's like Silent Hill fog 2 inches away from your face. It almost looks like a completely different game without it. Reminds me more of Far Cry, which came out 3 years earlier. It's really so bad that it makes me think that with the release of the Xbox 360 the year prior, and the PS3 on the way, the developer just slapped it on the game to seem next-gen, while at the same time the game's capped at 640 by 480.
But those problems are honestly superficial. The ugly gray graphics can be turned off, and the low poly models could be looked past for a mid-2000s budget PC game. But the worst thing, the one thing that ruins this game, and if you have eyeballs, you've noticed it, the thing that ruins this game is the frame rate.
Good God, this is possibly one of the worst optimized games for PC I have ever played. When there is just one enemy on screen, it lags. When you are using your sword, it lags. When there is any sort of background geometry, it lags. No matter where you are or what you are doing, you will not get a stable frame rate above 20.
My computer isn't exactly a gateway spec potato. It's not a serious gaming PC, but it can easily run games of the era like Gary's Mod or Far Cry 2 on high graphics. And I know those aren't exactly graphical powerhouses, but neither is this, but this runs so much worse!
To be fair, I have heard and seen that running this on Windows 10 and other modern versions of Windows can lead to even rougher slowdown, which could very well be true. Unfortunately, I couldn't get this working on anything older, and even if I could, I really can't imagine it being that much better though, because there were a very select few times, when it felt like I got a solid 60 FPS for like a second, meaning that something in the game is slowing it down, most likely the entities, and that should not be happening.
Alright, that's enough whining about the visuals. For now. Let's get back to the game itself.
You move with W, A, S, and D and jump like you're on the moon with the spacebar. You start with a sword and 2 flintlock pistols. You also have an unarmed attack, but I have no clue why. Most FPS games have an unarmed attack as the melee attack. but if you have a sword or a knife, you don't need one. It just messes with my head each time I scroll down thinking I'll advance to the gun, but instead you just get a lame-ass punch attack. And yeah, the melee attacks are in third person and the guns are in first person. At first, I was using pretty much only the sword, as I thought that ammo was sparse, for a reason I'll get into very soon. But eventually I discovered that the game runs so much worse when in third person, as opposed to the first person guns. It's not cured in first person, but it's a hell of a lot better. And since you have to be close to enemies to use the sword, which is definitely weaker than later weapons such as the shotgun and sniper rifle, not to mention the switch between third and first person just being jarring on its own, even if the frame rate didn't dip 20 frames each time, so screw the swords, just stick to the guns. Speaking of the guns, they aren't perfect weapons either. As I said earlier, I kept thinking I was running out of ammo during battle, as sometimes after shooting a couple rounds from a gun, it would just stop shooting, insinuating to me that I'm out of ammo and can't shoot anymore. I assumed it wasn't reloading since it seemed so random and would happen out of nowhere, so I would assume it's out of ammo and I would have to switch to the sword, but it turns out no, I wasn't running out of ammo. As you can see down here, this number represents how much ammo you have in your selected gun. My only guess is it's supposed to be more realistic to pirate era guns in the 17th century, and so they just stopped working. But if that's the case, why isn't there an animation or some indicator, and why does it happen so much? No, it can't be intentional. I refuse to believe it. The enemies have no restriction. In fact, they can attack with minimal effort. Sometimes they aren't even moving, but still attack somehow. Also, the crosshair only appears when you're crouching, which is fine. That does make some sense, and I kinda like the feature, mostly since it didn't get in the way. The HUD is simple enough. You have a red bar for health, a green bar for your stamina, and a blue bar for how much armor you have. At the bottom there's a big red arrow telling you the exact direction where the level completion point is. It can be pretty helpful, but it doesn't account for walls. There are medkits scattered around the level, so you never feel fully weak after fighting a group of enemies. There's also green power-ups which give you a stamina boost, which would be nice, but in case the game wasn't enough like a PowerPoint, you have this nauseating, blurry, flickering effect the whole time, which just makes you want to avoid them so you don't have to suffer through them. And you pick up armor every so often, with certain pickups giving more than others. You can also pick up ammo for your guns and gold. As far as I can tell, gold does nothing. There's no store or anything to use it on, so I'm pretty sure it's just for a higher score. Maybe extra lives, but I didn't notice. Oh, and yeah, there's lives. I think you get 5 when you start, and none after each reload. Which I get, but also, why not give you more? Either way, you'll have to start from the beginning of the stage, besides the very rare checkpoints, which were so rare I forgot they were in the game most of the time.
Did you get all that? Well, if you did, you understand the game better than I did when I first started, so now that we have some gameplay foundation, let's get into it.
The first level acts as an intro, where you just have to make it through to the end, getting used to the combat before facing off with this big knight who acts as a boss at the level, but in others is used as more of a heavy knight. You also fight these regular knights who are pretty weak, these shotgunners who take quite a bit of effort to kill but are manageable. Also, I think his model is stretched out. I thought it was just because the game was stretched on my widescreen monitor, but no, I think he really is scaled incorrectly.
Also, yeah, sorry if it gets confusing having me refer to enemies as regular knights or shotgunners, because really, I don't know what else to call them. They don't give you any background on why any of these people are called or why they all want to kill you.
Whenever there's action, there's background music, and it's very loud. It's always the same damn pirates like each level has its own song, but they play over and over in the level and they get seriously annoying. The second level has you maneuvering through these corridors, now with access to the shotgun, which ended up being my favorite weapon, as it can take out pretty much anything within 1 to 3 shots. I also discovered with the sword, there may be a blocking motion with the right click, but the few times I tried to use it, it didn't work. To beat this level, you just have to make it into the room at the end. You could probably do it without killing the knights, but you'd have to get past them. And this is when that gun glitch really sucks. Probably look like I'm an idiot just letting him hit me, but I swear I was clicking as much as I could, and it would only shoot a couple of times. In the third level, you get a sniper rifle, which besides having some of the craziest recoil I've ever seen in a video game, it's a pretty good weapon. It's stronger than the shotgun for sure, but you also don't find as much ammo for it. The level wasn't too bad till I got halfway through and got stuck. The arrow was telling me to go right, but there weren't any passageways I could see, and there seemed to be an invisible wall preventing me from investigating. I tried going back and found nothing. Eventually I examined the sides and found a hallway, which after killing the enemy seemed to lead to nothing. Till I noticed these oddly ramp-like planks, which I thought were just decoration or blocked by a possible invisible wall, but were actually ramps that barely worked at letting you climb them, but they were in fact the ticket to advancing. And then I died to the big knights and had to go all the way to the start of the level again. But at least I knew where to go. I died a couple times more, and I found that enemies can hit you with a sword if they're below you, but you can't shoot them. How is that fair? Eventually, I reached the end zone, which had this fidgeting goblin figure, which then led to a cutscene. Finally, some more plot.
What? Sorry, I can't hear over this loud-ass music. Not that you can understand them anyway, I'm pretty sure it's a made-up fantasy language, but maybe not. I don't know, I can't hear it.
The goblin ends up being some mysterious old man. And side note, Sephiroth, or Heroes, face looks pretty good here. Why didn't they just use this model for
This has to be a joke. It has to be one of the developers or something. His 3D face fits in comparison to the graphics. There's no way in hell they thought this looked good.
Anyways, this guy says the other crewmates were taken to a castle before vanishing into thin air, and that's all we get. Stage 4 takes us to a forest area with these red-dead looking things that have the same sounds as these new heavy knights you meet. Get the crossbow this stage, which has maybe as much power as the shotgun, but can shoot very fast. You also just have to make it to the end, and we get another cutscene. We meet one of our crewmates, Durer, who's been chained up in this dungeon, and he gives you a map to locate some treasure. Well, then it's on to...
It has to be a joke. This whole game has to be a joke. Look at his chin! His round, bulbous chin!
Stage 5. It starts as this labyrinth where I thankfully finally got some sniper ammo, because I actually did run out of ammo. And I know this because when you actually run out, you just lose the gun. I hate when games do this, because whenever I'm switching between weapons, it becomes muscle memory which guns you scroll past to get to the one you want, and taking it away just screws it up. Speaking of screwed up, the arrow is straight up useless in most of the stage. It kinda guides you where to go, but they always just end up pointing to walls, and it turns out what you thought was a big shadowy wall was actually a hallway to another room. And this one, you have to jump up to this little window that I didn't even think you could fit in. Why are these rooms so dark? And yeah, it's even worse with post-processing. Eventually, you make it to the boss.
Coming off! What?
Well, I guess since we didn't want to tell this guy our name, we have to kill him, and oh my god, it's the laggiest section of them all. What is happening? I'm being ganged up on by 3 guys and my gun isn't firing and I can't escape him.
And of course, no checkpoint, so you have to go all the way back.
After getting back, I discovered that the boss and the guards didn't return to their starting position, so I can just camp far away from them while they are stuck on the stairs and pick them off one by one until...
I did it? I did it? Yes! I did it! Was that the final boss? Did I beat this game? Did I? Did I? Oh. There's more.
Level 6 starts you in this patch of nature, which looks like a barricade you can't pass through, but nope, silly me applying logic to this game.
And this is where you come across the worst enemies in the game. Worse than the heavy knights. Worse than the heavier knights. Worse than the last boss. You encounter, as I like to call them, crossbow guys.
These guys run all around at incredible speeds compared to how slow you turn and shoot you with crossbows again and again without fail. Other enemies up to this point seem to be able to miss, at least if you shot them first, but these guys actually know what they're doing and I hate it. And despite looking so scrawny, they take so many shots to kill. Honestly, I think they take just as much as the heavy knights, and I died over and over and over again. And I thought about quitting. Then I used the crossbow, and that is what kills them in one hit.
Up until this point, you can use pretty much any weapon on any enemy and kill them in a reasonable number of shots. But after 5 levels of the same thing, the difficulty skyrockets, and now you have to use the same weapon the enemies are using to kill them? Did some other person design this level? You know what? It's probably this guy.
Carrying on with the level, you begin to see that this one is super ugly. I have post-processing off for a majority of this level, but the colors are so gray and muted that it looks like it's on. This is like an island. Shouldn't there be some color like some greens and natural browns? Also, the fauna is so abundant, it's also lagging the game. So no matter what you do, you're gonna be slogging through it. I ran in circles for a while not knowing what to do or how to follow the red arrow, just stumbling upon these really bright out-of-place pots that seem to do literally nothing until I found a passageway by some fences where I got ganged up on again while my crossbow jammed and then...
And that's it. I give up. I cannot play another minute of this game. I'll probably always have the save on my computer, so maybe I'll return to it another day, but I can't torture myself with another minute of this right now. I'll just watch the credits and say the last boss battle was the end. You know, surprisingly enough, this game only had 5 people who programmed it, and their names pop up multiple times in the credits for other positions. For a small Polish game studio, I can't lie and say that isn't at least a bit impressive, especially since I don't know how crunched for time and resources they must have been. Openoko Entertainment seemed to have made a few more games later on, and I'd love to see if they improved. But while I commend the studio's efforts, it doesn't take away from just how bad this game is. It's the definition of shovelware. But honestly, if you can set it up on your computer without the massive frame rate drops, I'd recommend giving it a try. The fugly CGI cutscenes are worth the price of admission alone. As for me, I'm gonna go play a much better game now. Hey, I said a better game, not a better looking game.
This was a video dedicated to a very special friend. Thank you.